Welcome everybody on the steps. It's Friday at 3:30 Eastern, and I am here with the amazing Bree Zabrowski from Apollo Performance, and I am Melissa McDaniel Grisham from Turning Point Dance Creations, and we are here with Carlos SparXz to talk today about how we can navigate the mental and physical challenges of tour life. This is a different show for us. I don't think we've ever done this, and we are so stoked to be here with someone who is on an active tour right now. Who knows what city Carlos is in right now? He could be anywhere. He could be there. He could be over there, anywhere. But we are excited to share or have him share his knowledge with us. If you are a first-time viewer, because it is early in season 4, this is Beyond the Steps. We are a weekly video podcast that lifts up issues for performance athletes and dancers on issues such as racism and equity, sex abuse and prevention, nutrition, psychology, mindset, and dance medicine and science, which is always our very, very favorite. You can find all of our episodes on YouTube at Apollo Performance or at TP Dance Creations. You can share and like this episode at any time you want to and call people over to watch it because it is going to be a gem. So please make sure you stay tuned because I'm sure Carlos has a load of knowledge from the time that he has been on the road for the past few years. If you have comments or questions, drop them in the chat. We want to hear from you. We want to hear what you have to say. We want to get those questions answered if at all possible. So make sure you use our chat. And without further ado, I would love for Bree to introduce Carlos.
Yeah, we're so excited to have Carlos back. What's up, everybody? Carlos SparXz Caraballo. Carlos, how do you say your last name?
Yeah, that's it. Caraballo.
Yeah, Caraballo. I did it.
See, nailed it.
I nailed it. Yes, happy Friday. Is a professional movement artist specializing in dance, tricking, and stunts. He has competed and performed in national dance competition, TV films, live shows around North America. Notable appearances include NBC's World of Dance Season 3 with the upper team, USA Hip Hop Dance Championships, a 4-time silver medalist, and currently on tour with the Jurassic World live tour. My kids are going to freak when they hear that because we love Jurassic Park, Jurassic World, Jurassic, all the things over here. But outside of performing, Carlos loves specialty coffee. I feel you on that. Spending time with his wife, bouldering, and playing spike ball. Carlos, what's up? How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm happy to be back.
Yeah, you're living the dream. So before we got started, you were just sharing, which is a great segue into just the episode in general, how much your life has changed in the last year since we had you on last. So talk a little bit about what's been going on with you.
Yeah, so I think when we last talked, I still had an apartment. I still had like a home address. And now that is no longer the case. Honestly, I've been on the road for so long. I'm on the road for so long as well that it literally logistically doesn't make sense to have a place. It made more sense to just kind of let the place go, live on the road, save up, and live this new life. So to give you guys some perspective of like what my I want to say like weekly life is every week I'm in a new city. This tour is easily the most significant tour that I've been on. So every week we're in a new place that includes a bunch of different cities in the United States. And then this season, we've gotten the chance to go to Vancouver, British Columbia. We've gone to Quebec City, Montreal, Toronto, and then we're even going to hit Mexico City next year at the end of this contract.
Wow.
So
you're going
pretty
international
crazy.
even.
Yeah.
So how long is your contract with this? And this, I mean, again, it's a great segue. So
yeah. So the first contract that so this is my second season with this tour.
Right.
The first contract included what's called a build. So it's basically this tour was going on in like 2019. The world changed in 2020. I don't know if you guys know why. But then this tour started right back up in, I want to say 2022, something like that. Anyways, when it started back up, it was a lot of new cast, including myself. We spent several months in Florida doing rehearsals and essentially rebuilding the show. And then that contract on the road was about, I want to say 8 to 9 months. And then we took a break. We got about like a month break, want to say something like that. Actually, I think it was a little less than that. And then this contract is for a year, a little more than a year, because we have a break before we go to Mexico City. But yeah, it's about that long. And then if we choose to stay on, it'll continue on even further when we go fully international in the coming
That's
years.
fantastic. And I mean, and we're going to talk about this, I'm sure, today, but there's nothing better than having, as a performer, having that job security and knowing, hey, I've got money, because that's the biggest thing about going on tour is, like, it's great. You're making great money and you're traveling the world and all those things. And then the tour stops. And most people don't realize you have to, like, book your next job, and you don't know when that's going to be. So having that stability of a book show under contract, you know exactly when that contract starts, exactly when it's going to end, and having the possibility to extend that's amazing. Congrats to you. We're so happy for you. You look so happy. So that's fantastic. So I want to back up a little bit and tell us a little bit about what you do. Like, I know that you're a professional movement artist specializing in dance, tricking, and stunts. Like, that's what your bio says. But what is it that you're most known for when you're auditioning, and when you're, do you kind of broker yourself as an artist that can do it all? Or what are you more of a specialty artist?
So I think probably if you would have asked me that conversation during the very first time that I was on here, I was definitely like dance and tricking. Like, that was kind of the dream. That's what I thought that I would do. I was competing with a team called SparXz, and before that, I was competing with another team in that same dance family. And we were competing at a high level. We were competing at Hip Hop International. We were placing, we were competing in the world championships, doing things like that. We got the chance to go on TV. That was awesome. So I was in, like many other dancers, in class, training, practicing, and thinking, okay, how can I make this dance thing work? How can I make this this tricking stuff work? And then I booked a job on a tour that booked me, like, because of my tricking ability, but as a part of it, they had stunt fighting. So my character was not only like a tricker and they had a section where it was just like flashy tricks and stuff like that on stage. It was a live show. But another part of this show had stunts and stunt fighting and stuff like that. And what was funny is that I never thought of this before, but as dancers, we're used to learning choreography. We're used to understanding like tempo and pace and storytelling, in the sense that a lot of times when we dance, we talk about the different textures that are sometimes even within one piece, especially if you're in the world of hip hop, where songs are mixed and you'll have 5 different songs, and the whole point of strategically placing those different songs is to have a different emotion, or to evoke a different emotion from the audience. All of those skills that I had been developing, some of them like subconsciously, just because of that's what the bubble I was used to, started to come in handy when I was learning choreography, learning how to figure out a pace between my partner and I, as far as when to throw a punch, when to take a reaction, what kind of acting beat, what kind of emotion, like what was my motivation for whatever the next action that I was doing. So I learned that that stunts, specifically like stunt fighting, is actually a lot more like dance than it is even real fighting.
Oh yeah. That makes sense.
And that was a skill that I never even thought of that. I had never put that into a possibility, right? So I kind of saw that as an avenue, and I realized that, like, oh, I really enjoy this. I get some of the same satisfaction that dance gave to me, and still does, but I now have a whole other way of finding work and finding employment than I felt, and this isn't the case, but I'm just telling you my mind frame when I was competing and stuff like that. I felt like the easiest, no, not the easiest, but the most obvious forms of employment would be either being a dance studio owner slash teacher choreographer, so being employed by a studio, or being like an independent dancer getting gigs,
Yeah.
and competing in that. And to be honest, like I wasn't the best dancer even in my own community. Like just being real, I had the special skill of tricking that not a lot of dancers do. So that kind of leveled the playing field a little bit. But I was like kind of looking around and be like, man, if I'm going to just like purely dance auditions,
Right.
I'm gonna get schooled.
It's
You
such
know?
like a classic testament to like everything we hear in the industry about be open to
New
opportunities
things.
that may present themselves, be open to what they might ask. Like, you know, if they ask you to do something outside of your comfort zone at an audition or on a job, it's just how it can lead to more jobs if you just say yes, right? If you say yes and you open your mind to the possibilities, it's just fantastic. Good for you.
And to your point is, I never thought it was a possibility, and I was kind of getting bummed at the fact that like I'm just gonna be another, story of somebody that ages out and then
Doesn't know what to do.
yeah, and then I'm fortunate enough to where I had like I went to college. I was, I had knowledge that I still currently use. I do it as being a coach and stuff like that, and like a fitness coach and everything. But it's like, man, it's kind of like I was still a bummer because I feel like I still had the capacity to do something. I just wasn't at that level, and I knew the reality of it. So I found stunts. I started learning like, hey, if any of your audience are b-boys or b-girls, you do stunts, whether you
You
know
don't
it
even
or
know
not.
you're doing stunts. Right.
Yeah.
Because so, I'm sorry, I'm gonna sidebar, but I'm like,
No, sir, we
holy
love it.
fuck,
We love good sidebar.
all of these things make sense that I didn't know, and so I wanted to share it with somebody that can relate. So my knowledge of choreography and like emotion and all of the things that go into a dance performance, boom, that relates to fight choreography because it's all the same stuff. It's knowing your distance, it's knowing your emotions, it's knowing your choreography, and it's knowing like, hey, you got to pay attention, right? So even like a small skill like that, just coming from a dance background and being in that environment of like, we got to know because you don't want to be that weak link. Then
Right.
I was a b-boy. That was my first style that I ever learned when I learned how to dance. So I understood the concept of hitting the ground in a way that wasn't going to hurt, landing on my upper back, avoiding my hips, avoiding my lower back, things like that. So what I didn't know
But
is
did you
when
teach yourself those things? Like you just taught yourself that naturally from developing the skill. You weren't necessarily taught that with the anticipation, hey, I'm going to be doing this one day, right?
no, I was trying to learn those skills so I could battle and win tournaments.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
But I started learning like stunt falls. And I realized I was like, oh, this is the same stuff. It's the same. The only difference is now I don't have to make it look clean.
Right.
Because the point is that it doesn't look clean when you
It's not
fall.
look clean, right? It's supposed to be realistic. Like I should
There was
really
even
fall
less
here.
pressure.
I should actually fall. Wow. That's amazing. Who
And it's
knew?
the same thing in I mean, you look at more well, like traditional, if that's for lack of a better term, dance styles. You learn how to go to the ground without hurting yourself. And dancers, a lot of time, we don't get mats. We don't get like we're either on Marley or hard floor or whatever. And those are knowing how to have the body awareness to keep yourself safe in explosive movement. Again, is another skill that translates to stunts that I would have never known. So then fast forward to now, I got into stunts. I really love it. I auditioned for this job, which had a stunt component, and now I'm here, and
Yeah,
like
and
that's what I'm
you're
trying
on
to
the
pursue.
road. That is so amazing. See, that's how it works. You
How it
never
works.
ever know. And you never have to leave dance. You don't have to leave it. You can depart and you can branch off, but you never actually have to leave it. So that is just such a great story. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I know that there are, you talked about, you told us about, you're only home 8 weeks out of pretty much a year, and you're very fortunate that your wife is traveling with you. But there are a lot of stresses that go along with touring and not being in the same place on a regular basis. And Bree talked a little bit about, when is this tour going to end and what does the money look like. But do you think that performance athletes, dancers, stunt, and anybody who's on tour, do you think that the stress of touring gets overlooked or not validated, because sometimes people think you should just be grateful to be working? And it feels hard to say, well, yeah, I'm grateful to be working, but I miss my cat, or
I'm
you know
exhausted.
I'm
Yeah.
exhausted, or I never get the food I like, or like those types of things. Do you think that that ever happens? Do you find that that's a thing?
That's a really good question. Um, I think it can. I think
Hmm.
um, I think just naturally, since as performers that are working, there can be that I don't know, that thought process that's like, hey, you're doing what you love, so you're not working a day in your life, like
Hmm.
that kind of stuff. And that's not wrong. I'm very fortunate. I'm very grateful, and I I get a unique fulfillment that not a lot of people in this world get from their employment.
Hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
really really fortunate for that. But yes, to your point, there's more than meets the eye, and there's a couple of different stressors that come from tour that you don't always hear about, and that's
Hmm.
kind of the point, because as performers, the audience that paid a lot of money, potentially depending on who's coming and the show that you're on and how many people and how many kids and all of this stuff, they paid a lot of good money, so it almost doesn't really matter what you're going through during the week. Like, you still got to put on a show, so we're used to that, right? um, but hopefully, and that's one of the reasons why I was happy to come on here, is I can share a little bit of those stressors, so that if anybody wants to come on tour and feels like this is the life that they would want to at least explore, maybe for a season or something like that, um, I can at least give them some insights as far as what I went through, so that way they can make the best experience for themselves if they're ever in a
Hmm.
Yeah.
situation.
It's all about taking it into our own hands and
Right.
making sure that we are coping and acknowledging our stress and coping with it the best way we can. But I know every tour is different. Every management company that runs the tours is different. So I know there's no, one size fits all answer for this question. I'll preface it with that. But are there specific guidelines for the frequency and spacing of performances within a tour schedule that help the performers avoid overexertion? Um, are there any current regulations for that? I would venture to guess no, but maybe not. How can is there a way that performers encouraged to collaborate with the management team or the tour organizers to ensure that that schedule is allows for adequate rest, or is that not a thing? How does it work?
It depends, kind of like what you said, but I can at least give you a little bit of insight into that. Generally, that kind of comes down to your contract.
Yeah,
So for us, it's written into our contract, the like amount of shows and stuff like that we have. I've had other contracts that don't necessarily have like a show limit or like extra compensation for extra shows. It also depends on your show. So our show has a lot of different elements to it
sure.
that can only handle so many shows. Um,
Hmm.
so that changes things depending on if you're international or domestic. Even like even the same tour can change. Like the same
They,
show can change when it goes international. because the scheduling is different. I've also found for another touring job that I had, because it was a shorter touring job, there were more shows because it was like a seasonal thing, and it's like we bang out these shows and then
Then
we
you're
move
done.
on to the next one, we hit them, and then the next show, next show, next show. Whereas like this tour that's a little bit longer has more days in between, but it's significantly longer. So I mean, I know that's like such a non-answer, but at least it gives you, or gives people an idea of the range of differences between even going on tour.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you guys are just joining, we're talking with Carlos Caraballo today about how performers can prepare for the mental and physical challenges of being on tour. This is Beyond the Steps. This is a show that we talk about all the issues that impact the dance community and performance athletes, from racism to gender and equity, sex abuse and prevention, nutrition science, and more, and psychology too. But today we're talking with Carlos again about how we can help performers prepare. Carlos, how can performers incorporate mindfulness and relaxation practices into their tour routines to support mental health and well-being? Because I would imagine, we're going to talk about the rigors of the tour life throughout this episode, but I would imagine mentally it takes a toll, especially, in the beginning. I can imagine the excitement of the tour and the newness of it all is it's really exciting and fun, and everybody's like, gung ho and high energy, and it's fun, and everybody's vibing and all the things. But as that goes on, you start getting sick of people, you start getting sick of yourself, you just want your own bed, like it starts to take a mental toll. On top of that, we all know the role exhaustion plays in having a healthy mindset. So what are some techniques that you've seen used or that you use yourself to support your own mental health and well-being?
Yeah, so I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because that's probably one of the most overlooked elements of being on tour. I feel like there are definitely physical stressors, absolutely, and I hope that we get into those and I could talk about those for sure. But like the mental side of the thing, I think was the most I was the most ignorant of when coming on a tour. I think some of the strategies that have personally helped me, I'm only one person, so I'm sure there's many other ones, but finding elements of routine in the lack of routine. So, like I mentioned before, I'm in a new city literally every week. I grew up not in necessarily a major city. Like I was outside of Phoenix, so it wasn't like a rural town, but like I didn't
like
grow up.
suburban.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I was used to that, right? I wasn't.
Right.
I didn't grow up in downtown cities where these arenas are placed, right? So that's very different for me. And every city you have to adapt. Like, okay, this is a funny way of illustrating a greater point. One of the most favorite things that I look forward to when I go home is being able to buy a gallon of milk, a full gallon of milk,
Full
and
gallon
not
of milk.
having like, and being able to buy the regular size of things without, because we live in mini fridges and stuff like that. And it's like, you think like, oh man, that's such a first world problem. And it probably is. But like, also, if I'm trying to eat as best as I can, that's going to improve my mental health. That's going to prepare me for shows. That's like just even bringing me pleasure. Some of my favorite foods, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes they just don't fit, or sometimes in mini fridges it's too cold or it's too warm, and or like being able to buy a box of greens and being confident that it's not going to wilt, like little things like that, right? So a scenario that you just got off a week of shows, you've had like a 10-hour drive or something to like get the next city, you arrived at 3 a.m, whatever, you're tired, you're exhausted, but at least you went to bed, you like got up or whatever, and then like you wake up to all of your stuff being like ruined in the morning because the mini fridge like messed with you, right? Add on to the fact that you're probably homesick maybe at this point, and and you miss your dog or your parents or your significant other, like all of these things, and like little by little it starts to gain on you. So for me, what I found is if I can find some sort of routine every week, that really helps. So when it comes to groceries, I have like a staple of lists of things that generally will stay okay during the week, even if the mini fridge doesn't work or
Right.
whatever. I find, which I know we're talking about mental health, but like when your regular daily stuff doesn't have to add to your normal stress, that
Sure.
takes a lot of stress off your mind,
Yeah.
because it's something less that you have to think about. You can now think about other stuff. Something that I like to do is I brought my coffee supplies, my little
Okay.
coffee white thing. So I'm a coffee nerd. So I have my grinder, I have like my little pour over thing.
You
I
brought your
have
own
my
coffee?
scale. Oh yeah. Like I have a grinder, I have like my pour over set, I have my little scale. Like everything's like travel size, this little collapsible kettle. And it's something so small, but like every
It's the
morning unless I go
comfort.
find
It's
it.
the comforts. Yeah.
Yeah. I get to go out and do that. And like I get to ease into my day. And no matter what hotel, no matter where I am in the world, like at least there's something that grounds me every day. So finding little like routines like that, it grounds me. I love visiting new coffee shops in every city. That's another thing that grounds me. I get to go and just enjoy those things. So I have little bits of routine. Staying on my working out and rehab during the week also helps me mentally. And then some other people on tour, I don't do this as much because I'm kind of a homebody and I like very much routine, but they love to find like what's the best taco place or what's the best whatever space, and that helps them kind of like decompress and enjoy the city and stuff like that. So
Right. That's
it was a
those are
long
actually really good points. Like developing routines that you can take from one place to another. Like it might be going on a walk at 8 a.m. I can go on a walk at 8 a.m. in any city in the world at any point. Those types of things really can actually really help. So I totally get that. What about physically? So what are some of the most, I would probably say, I know there's probably a plethora. But one or two of the biggest physical challenges, and what strategies do you use to combat those?
Well, and also I'm going to piggyback on that question because I know that sometimes there's a perception that performers that are on these big tours, they get very well taken care of. There's massage, there's physical therapists on staff, there's the resources that in your typical day-to-day dance career and environment you don't necessarily have available to you. So talk about all of that.
Yeah, that can vary. That can
Yeah.
vary a ton, depending on what your show schedule is, depending on, the resources they have available. I've been on tours where they have an athletic trainer on staff that travels with you. I've been on other ones where they don't. I've been on tours where um, they have a section of um, of space allotted in their equipment for physical fitness equipment that
Mm-hmm.
are available for the performers to use. I've been on tours where, I mean, you got a hotel gym and
That's what you got.
kind of, yeah, like figure it out. So I think the biggest tip that I could give, that I honestly I will always try to maintain this as I continue on in this career, is to build some sort of relationship with some sort of physical fitness expert, whether
Mm,
it's finding a uh, sports performance slash physical therapy clinic or practitioner in particular, that you can build a relationship with, whether you're injured or not, because a lot of times we're not like injured, but we're compensating like no other, as I'm sure
mhm,
many of the guests that have been on here have already talked about.
mhm,
We're super compensators. So even if you're not necessarily injured, if you think that being on the road is something that you want to do, build some sort of relationship with somebody back home, because that sort of stability. I have a big advantage that I'm from Arizona, and there's a clinic in Arizona that I've made a habit of going to every time that I get a break or every time that I have an issue. And what I'm lucky, or what's fortunate, is that clinic also offers like virtual
Okay.
appointments and stuff like that. So I kind of like have them as like part of my team.
Have your own
And
team.
having my own team. And unfortunately, I've gotten injured a couple of times. This is a very, very long tour. I've been battling several injuries. But what's really helped is that I have somebody that knows me already. They know what I do. I've gone back to them in person. Even if I didn't go back to them in person, I still work with them. That's part of my team. I also just brought on somebody to take over my strength and conditioning as well. And again, I'm working with them virtually. I understand that not all of us have the means to be able to do that. I didn't have the means to be able to do all of that right off the bat. But if you can develop some sort of relationship with somebody like that to be on your team, I promise you, yes, it can seem very expensive, but what's a lot more expensive is when you get knocked out of shows because you're injured.
Yeah.
So that's
But so
probably one of the biggest steps.
what I'm hearing from you though is that it really is up to the performer to make sure whether that resource is provided to you or not from the tour, it really is up to you as the performer to make sure that you have that well-rounded care available to you so that your body can sustain that. Is that right?
Yeah, technology is an awesome thing. There's way more opportunities to get consistent care these days than there ever has been before.
Absolutely. So I kind of want to hop back a little bit because you're talking about the the mental rigor. I just made up a word.
I'm
The
with it.
mental rigor,
I like it.
the mental rigor, the physical rigor, and you can be injured in any type of way. How do you advocate? Because you do have bosses, you have people who pay you, there are people who
Yeah.
sign your checks, there are also people who are waiting for your job, who want to be on your tour and who want to fill your spot. How do you manage advocating for yourself in times where you do need more help or more support, or you may need a break, or you may be injured, and still having the courage to do that, knowing that there are shows that need to be done?
Yeah, I think the answer I would want to give to that is like, I guess in three ways. Like one, there's your own performances, there's your soft skills with your management, and then there's like the more formal, like I guess there's still soft skills, but it's a more formal setting. So I'll kind of split this up in three ways. So the first one, advocating, a lot of times places of employment have a formal chain of command, and you can follow those chains of command. Like, in both of the tours that I've been on, there are the equivalent of a captain of some sort in some department. So that would be the first person to go to. You can elevate that further. I've been on tours where we've advocated as a team, and we've wrote letters and had conversations with our management about certain issues. So there's the formal way of being able of doing that, and every job is going to have their way of doing it. Some are better than others, but at least a lot of times they have an avenue. So know that know and appreciate that there's that. The other side of it is I find that if your soft skills are honed in and you are a person that is dependable, you're a person that does their job, I'm not saying be a pushover, but like you're someone that they can count on. Exactly. And I've even had this for myself. This is a personal experience that I can kind of vaguely talk about it, but you get the gist. Is I went into a tour with that purpose and
Mhm.
wanting to be that type of person. So then when I did get injured, I was able to use all of that like social capital and like
Right.
credit
Mhm.
to advocate, because I
Mhm.
literally heard this back to me where it was, oh, if you are saying something, that means that this is a problem to look into.
Right. Right.
So sometimes being strategic about what you bring up, when you bring it up, what
Mhm.
kind of like social credit you've built up for yourself,
Mhm.
um, that all contributes. I know it's just
Mhm.
rehearsal. The way that you act in rehearsal can affect when you ask for something. It's not
Mhm.
manipulation. It's just humans.
Well, it's knowing how to play the game. I mean, let's be honest. That's
Absolutely.
part of the intelligence
Right.
of that we develop as human beings. Like, you're not taking advantage or manipulating, but you're playing within the confines of the system that was built, right? So I don't
Mhm.
think there's
Exactly.
any shame in that at all.
And I think some people look at that as favoritism. Like
Sure.
even in a studio setting with students, you're like, oh well, she got to be absent because she's
Yep.
her favorite. Well, no, I know she's really sick when she's absent because she shows up daily, 100% there. And people do mistake that for favoritism. Oh, you're playing favorites. Well, why does that dancer get to do that? Well, because that dancer has developed a track record of
Yeah.
being there, dependable, engaged, and ready. And I would love to for people to make that connection that it's not favoritism. It's actually because you've built the social capital that you need in the relationship, and the reputation. Reputation matters in this situation.
Yeah.
We're in a unique industry where it's not like we're necessarily in sales where they can objectively look at the numbers that we bring in, right? But we still are evaluated in our performance in different ways. And
Mm-hmm.
we can use that to our advantage, because at the end of the day, like, everybody has an interest in this. And if you can make the lives easier for the people above you, when it comes time for you to request something, they can make the life a little bit easier for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last like element to advocacy is um, being like having the perspective that depending on how long your tour is, and this is a huge learning lesson for me, it is a marathon, not a sprint. There are people even on this tour that I've done more shows than I have, and there's people out there that are probably listening that I've done twice as many shows, but the point still stands. For example, just with this um, show alone, I've done this show easily over 200 times.
Wow.
Easily. And this like in the course of maybe like in a year or something like that, we passed that mark.
Mm-hmm.
A long time. So knowing, I'm trying to like strategically figure out how to say this, because I'm not saying to not give your full presence and intention. But what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying is, if you have this many shows, learn the pace that is required to give a excellent performance,
Uh-huh.
not necessarily your everything on every second of your performance.
Right. Pace yourself.
Exactly. It's kind of like in a dance performance. And yes, I know that they even watch the back.
Uh-huh.
But regardless, there's still a difference between the person that's front and center in that section, and then
Uh-huh.
there's a person that's like back left.
Uh-huh.
And if that person in the back left knows they've got to be in the front and center in the next set, there's a different level of pacing. So
Mhm.
learn that pacing, especially when you do the
Yeah.
same show so many times. Like, just because we're amazing creatures, we condition for it. So learn that pacing, because that's what they also. I know it's that they don't always say it, but in a sense, that's actually what you're being paid for. You're not necessarily being paid for to go 120. you're being paid for to be consistent to the level that the show requires
It's
every single show.
right, right. And that's the word that popped in my head. You want to be consistent, consistently excellent, not really excellent and hideous, and really
Yes.
excellent. And you don't want spikes. You want to keep, now your plateau should be high level. You are a professional performer, but you gotta learn. I mean, and y'all, that's life. Life is pacing.
Sure.
Like, listen, I'm a horrible wife today. I ordered dinner, I didn't cook it, and now I'm taking a nap. But tomorrow I'm cooking homemade X, Y, and Z. It's because I have more time today. And so that pacing of life is another one of those transferable dancer skills that you learn. Like, life is a pace and so is a performance. So I totally, totally, totally get that. If you are just now tuning in, we are talking to Carlos SparXz about tour life and how we can navigate mental health and physical health, and what are those challenges and how we can best advocate for ourselves. He has dropped so many gems on us from an active performer who is on tour right now. If you want to watch the beginning of this episode from the beginning, please go to YouTube at Apollo Performance or at TP Dance Creations. Like, share, and subscribe. You will all get something from it. If you are even thinking about auditioning, you gotta watch this show before, because once you audition and you get it, you're like, oh yay! And you haven't thought about any of the stuff that Carlos has brought up to us today. So please make sure you're watching that. One of the things that I want to bring up before we kind of move to closing out is the toll that touring can take on family and relationships. We mentioned a little bit earlier, Carlos is very fortunate that his wife is on tour with him. So they get to live the nomadic lifestyle together, but that is not the case for most people. What is the advice that you would give to the families of touring performers?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I've been like you said, I'm very, very fortunate that my wife is on tour with me. She's also employed by the same company. She works in a little bit different of capacity, but she gets to travel with me, and she's in a very similar schedule as I do. But that was not always the case. So I think one of the biggest tips is, one, if you're not in that place in your life yet where you have a lot of strings, or you have a family yet or anything like that, that might be the perfect chance for you to at least go try out tour life and see what that's like. And that could also be a springboard for experience into the next thing. So that's awesome, right? But for the people that do have families, one thing that really helped me before I came on tour is I had the conversations of a plan to still stay connected. For my wife and I, it was, what was the schedule that she was going to come visit me, or that I was going to fly back home. Obviously, a lot of these conversations you can't always know for sure before you're actually on tour. But it definitely is worth having preliminary conversations of like, hey, what frequency are you looking to see each other? What's realistic in our budget, in our time, in our schedule, stuff like that.
Sure.
Right.
What's the type of schedule that we can have as far as staying together? Like, my wife and I, we used to have FaceTime dates where I would set aside time, and like, hey, that was her time, and I would find a spot, and we would just have that. We would, like, back home, we love to go to coffee shops. So we would, like, each make a cup of coffee at home, and then we'd have like a FaceTime date and have coffee together. Little things like that we talked about before I was even on tour. So stuff like that, it really does help to have those, because once you're there, I can tell you, once you get there, especially if you're part of a show build where the show's not necessarily set, it's currently being built, and you have so many rehearsals and stuff like that, you just get lost in the sauce. It comes at you so fast.
Yeah.
There's so many life changes that happens. I don't even know when I'm gonna do laundry, like all these like little things. And then the unfortunate part is, like, since you're in such a bubble, that can take a toll on your family that's still living their normal life, right?
Right.
It's so true, because so my husband toured with a national convention, and he was, you know, taught for a long time, and then he moved into a director position, but he was gone, you know, Thursday or Friday through Monday every week for, you know, 10 months out of the year, and it was a lot. And I think in the first, when I met him, it was funny to see it span the course of our, you know, as our marriage grew, our family grew. I met him doing it. So it's not like, I mean, I was very aware. I had my own thing. It was good. Like, we'd be happy to see each other. It was magical, you know, for a long time. Then we got married. And then,
Right.
you know, I started going to work in a, you know, a regular job, not a regular, I mean, I was in a dance studio, but I mean, I was gone all day, every day, managing and directing that program while he was on the road. So he would come home and feel like he was kind of lost at the studio. And like, well, life goes on, you know. And then we had kids, and then we have two little ones at home. And then my attitude towards his tour changed a lot. I was really frustrated and resentful to him at times, because he was getting to go off and live the glamorous life and just be worried about himself and what he had to do on the road. And then I'm at home with two little babies, my job, dealing with the day-to-day life. And then, you know, all of a sudden the bickering starts a little bit more. And then the next phase of that, well, what I wasn't understanding is when he was on the road, he was feeling like he was missing out at home.
Yeah.
And so then the next phase was, he got so burned out with the travel. And not saying that this would happen to everybody, but for him, it just, the non-negotiable was the kids. Like, he just wasn't willing to miss any more of their, you know, he would come home and be like, they're bigger, they've gotten older, like, I miss this, I miss that. And you know, at that point, that's when we had to figure out as a family, you know, the changes that made sense for us. And then the pandemic kind of happened and made that decision for us. And now he's home all the time. And then the final piece of that is, now he's home all the time. And I'm like, do you need to go on the road a little bit more? I'm like, now he's here all the time. And I joke, I mean, I'm so grateful, because we are able to pick up our kids, drop them off, and it's wonderful, because they have us here for everything. And we didn't have that for so long. But I'm just saying, there's so many stages to this that affect a family, you know, from being single to being married to having children, and even like feeling different about children when they're first born versus when they get to be 6, 7, 8 years old. You know, you really have to constantly evaluate your priorities, and is this worth it for our family? And I think, you know, I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that evolves, it sounds like, based on where you are and what stage of life you're in. It sounds like it totally evolves. I want to get to homework, because that is the crux of this show. We ask people every single week to do something, take action. So, Carlos, what is the one action that you want our listeners to take between now and next week, so 7 days, to make progress in this area, or to take action on some of the things that you've said?
I would say start building your team. If this is anything at all that you are interested, even a little bit, start building your team. So when I say that, I mean what I talked about before with finding somebody that can help you with your, you know, physical fitness. Somebody that, so that's like, you know, the physical fitness aspects. Somebody that can help you with the mental side of thing, whether that's, hey, finding a so my wife and I, we found a couple that the husband was in the military. So they dealt with this on a whole nother level. And we can call them if we're ever having issues. So we're building our social team that helps us mentally and spiritually. And then if there's any other element that really like brings you joy, any part of a community that really brings you joy, whether it's, hey, your old dance coach, or your current dance coach, or your captain, or your best friend, or something like that. Stay connected to those people, because when you're on the road and everything's crazy, it really helps to have a group of people that can ground you during the crazy times.
Yes, that is awesome. Awesome, awesome advice. We also have our homework that we give you every single week to take the steps initiative. It is a totally free course that has a number of learning resources around racism and equity, sex abuse and prevention, nutrition, psychology, dance medicine, and science. You name it. It is not by any means everything you could possibly need to know, but it is the start to getting to everything that you could possibly ever need to know. So please log on, take that. You can find that at Apollo Performance. And Bree's going to drop that right there on the screen there for you to be able to find that. Carlos, how can people follow you? And we want to, I mean, we need to know where you're going to be. So make sure that you give us somewhere to find that as well.
Yeah, the best place to reach out to me is definitely my Instagram. I'm Carlos SparXz. I came from a hip hop background, so we spell everything wrong because we think it's cool. So it's Carlos SparXz. SparXz is SPARXZ. You'll find out wherever I'm headed, what roles I'm doing. If you have any advice, if you guys are thinking about going on tour or anything like that, shoot me a DM. I try to answer those and give you any insights that I can.
Awesome. It's right there on the screen, that Instagram handle. I love it.
And what's the tour website, Carlos, so we can put that in too?
Yeah, so the tour that I'm currently on, the website is JurassicWorldLiveTour.com. So it's JurassicWorldLiveTour.com. You'll see everywhere where we're going.
I'm making a petition officially to make sure they come
let's
back.
Go. And if you're in the area, come through.
Yes.
It's a fun show.
I know Carlos.
Yeah. So reach out to Carlos with any questions. He's so great. All of our guests have been great about just being a resource for people that, need guidance and advice. So definitely take advantage of that. If you have questions for Carlos, he's happy to answer. And make sure you give him a follow too. So new this season, before we close out, we're doing our Flashback Friday episode. So one Friday of each month, we are going back to the vault for one of our favorite episodes. It's a surprise. We never know which one it's going to be till we pick it. From seasons 1 through 3, you'll probably see Carlos in some of them. We have so much fantastic, helpful content that it needs to be seen. And if you've already watched it, watch it again. I can't stress how important the information is, and share it with your fellow parents, colleagues, and even dancers. It's a great time to get familiar with Beyond the Steps, catch up, or just make sure the info is in your head, because we know it takes a few times to really get in here. But we hope you'll join us next week, November 17th, and be sure to share. After that, we're on hiatus for Thanksgiving. I can tell you we are immensely grateful for all of you and the opportunity with you each and every week. We love our Beyond the Steps audience and are excited to see where season 4 continues to take us. It's already been so much fun. Melissa, any special Thanksgiving plans?
Going to the in-laws, heading down to South Carolina to spend Thanksgiving down there.
And y'all, I want you all to say a little prayer for me, because I'm hoping that we're going to get the word that the new house is ready, and I'm going to be getting ready to move into the house. So we get rid of this background. Yeah. But we'll see you back here on December 1st with a brand new guest, brand new episode. Until then, wishing you and yours a very happy Thanksgiving holiday. And we hope you continue your journey beyond the steps.
Bye, everyone.